Hi, everybody. This is Steve Maggi from SMA Law Firm. Welcome to a new episode of Building the Bridge. And I have the honor and privilege of being here today with Annette Feltz, who is an intercultural communication expert and facilitator. She works with a lot of Dutch and American companies and individuals. Thanks for joining us, Annette.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So let's start from the beginning. What is intercultural communication and why is it so important?
Yeah, that's a long word. Have you ever worked with somebody from a different country, from a different culture, and you agree on something, you are on the same line, and then they don't get back to you, or whatever they get back to you with is completely different from what you thought you had agreed upon? And it's not that this person's malicious. It's not that this person has bad intentions. It's just intercultural differences. You see the world, you see the way of doing business one way, and this person sees the world and the way of doing business a different way. And so you're looking at the same thing, but you're seeing different things. And those are intercultural differences.
It's so difficult to do business and be successful, even in your own country.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think, you asked the question, obviously, what I do is work exclusively with international clients, and they have to understand, right, that they need to adapt their way of thinking and way of communicating in order to be successful in another market, right?
Exactly, exactly. And that's what I help them with. I help them understand, and that's the very first step, is to understand that the way that you look at the world, the way that you do business, the way you communicate and your expectations are very different from somebody else's way of doing business. And a person in another culture does business, builds trust, communicates differently from what you do. And it's understanding those differences that can then be used to create advantages.
Is there also an aspect, just thinking outside the box here, when it comes to email communications, when you're communicating in maybe someone's second language, so an American business person or professional working with, let's say, a Dutch person, obviously the Dutch, almost all of you speak English really well, but maybe have a different way of expressing yourself in English that's not the same as an American, and there also could be misunderstandings. How do you resolve that, or how do you help people understand each other better,
Right. Yeah, that's, the Dutch way of communicating. The Dutch are known to be direct, brutally direct. In the Netherlands, that's just how you communicate. That's actually, that's more of a compliment to be direct with somebody and tell them that that was a horrible presentation, because in the Netherlands, people separate the problem from the person. So you can tell somebody that was a horrible presentation. Now let's go have a beer together. And so that, of course, if you do that with your American counterpart, that will not be well received. So when I work with Dutch people who expand their business to the US, or who may be managing an American team, it's very important that they become aware of the fact that they are so direct, because that's how everybody communicates in the Netherlands. So nobody's aware of that this is very direct, and how this may be perceived by the Americans.
Right.
So it's very important to become aware of what you do, and then become aware of how that might be perceived by another culture. And once you understand those differences and you understand how that culture communicates, well, then you can take the best of both worlds and turn that into an advantage.
I think
So,
I would point out one thing, having worked with people all over the US as well as and companies that are setting up even in California. New Yorkers and North Carolinians and Idahoans and Californians all communicate very differently. Like a New Yorker will be much more upfront, but a California person might beat around the bush, as they say. They might not actually want to tell you that they're almost the opposite of the Dutch, right? So I think it's also important for people to understand that America is not one culture.
exactly. I mean, America is a big country. And like you said, you cannot compare somebody from California to somebody from New York. And it's the same way in the Netherlands, which is my native country. It's a tiny country compared to the US, but still the North is very different from the South, or the East from the West. But there are certain values which hold true for every American, or certain values which hold true for every Dutch person. So, for example, the American business culture, as we know it today, was started by the English settlers, the first settlers who arrived in the US. And well, it wasn't called the US when they arrived in America. And they came here because they wanted to be in charge of their own destiny. And they came to this country where there was nothing and they didn't know anything. So they had this pioneer spirit. And that pioneer spirit lives on in the majority of Americans, whether you look at somebody in New York or you look at somebody in California. Most Americans are driven by this pioneer spirit, by this drive to be in charge of your own destiny.
Very true.
And in the Netherlands, for example, North is very different from the South, but the Dutch have always been explorers. They've traded with many different countries around the world. And what made them so successful was their tolerance of other cultures. Basically, they said, we don't care about your culture. We just want to trade with you. We're not here to impose our Dutch values. And that tolerance still lives on today. Whether you look at somebody from the North or somebody from the South, most Dutch people are very, very tolerant of people who are different.
Very interesting.
And, yeah.
So there's so many layers and it's such a complex topic. And for people who are doing business or wanting to insert themselves into American society successfully, it's so important to understand this and to be able to work with someone like you. So how do people get in touch with you if they have questions about this, they want to plan accordingly before they move to the US?
The best way to reach me is by sending me an email. And my email address is Annette, ANNETTE, at expatriateassistance.com. And expatriate assistance is one word.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your knowledge and for your time today, Annette.
All right. Thank you for this opportunity, Steve. It's been a pleasure.